The Legend of Zelda series has been loved by so many of its fans since the birth of the series in 1986. Each release brings us an unforgettable adventure that we get lost in for hours, and Tears of the Kingdom is no different. From its massive story, to the 3 layers of Hyrule, and even its large amount of side quests, Tears of the Kingdom expanded on the adventures we had in previous Zelda titles and gave us so much memories. The game is just about everything us Zelda fans wanted and so much more. And when you think of this, you often wonder, how can the Zelda series expand after Tears of the Kingdom? Those who have finished the story of Tears of the Kingdom might often wonder what's next for the Zelda series, and can the next mainline Zelda game expand on what Tears of the Kingdom did? Well, good news, I have come up with an idea for the next Zelda game that could be way bigger than Tears of the Kingdom. In order to come up with a really good idea for the next Zelda, I decided to follow this planning list I've created. First, we must decide where this game should go in the Zelda timeline. I'll explain a bit later in the video, but we will only use the timeline including Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom to keep this video away from being a Zelda timeline theory video. After we decide where this game should go, we need to come up with the story of the game. In this step, we'll cover how this story will be told, the dungeons we could go through, and the overall objective we need to accomplish in the game. Once we come up with an excellent story, we need to do more of the gameplay planning. I'll talk about this more later, since there's so much to cover for gameplay. And lastly, the part of the game we'll talk about at the end of the video, but I'll keep it a mystery until then, so if you want to find out what it is, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. And without further ado, let us dive in. All of us Zelda fans know that the Zelda timeline is sort of complicated when it comes to figuring out where Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom fit in, but we'll cover that topic in a future video. I decided for this next Zelda game, it needs to be placed in what I call the Forgotten Timeline, which is just the timeline that includes Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. If we look at the timeline, we can come up with a few options. The first and most obvious choice is to have it be a sequel to Tears of the Kingdom. Now that Ganondorf is destroyed for good, there will be no more calamities to destroy Hyrule. We would be able to have an entirely new Zelda villain with an entirely new story. The only issue I have with this is that I'm not part of Nintendo, if you guys didn't already know that. It would be a creative idea, yes, but it would take me so long to plan for an actual good plot, and I don't think I'm quite ready to spend months putting a YouTube video together for this. Maybe in the future. Our other option is to have a game expand on a story briefly mentioned in the last 2 games. The Zelda team already did this with Tears of the Kingdom. If you recall, Breath of the Wild introduced us to the Zonai and only mentioned a few details about them, like them only being as barbarians. But in Tears of the Kingdom, they were the complete opposite and they were the main part of its story. So now that we know this is a great idea, the next question is what story needs to be expanded for its own game? And the answer is clear. The one event only briefly explained in both games and shown to us only in the form of a tapestry is none other than the first calamity 10,000 years ago. Yes, I know. You're all saying to yourselves that it would be way too similar to Breath of the Wild, and I would agree with you at first, but you would be wrong after hearing this. In Tears of the Kingdom, there are 152 shrines to find across the sky and surface of Hyrule. If all of them are completed, you will be rewarded with the Ancient Heroes aspect, which, if worn, will turn Link into a Zonai with long red hair, pointy ears, and a bushy tail. If you talk to Impa at Kakariko Village while wearing it, she tells Link that he looks exactly like the ancient hero shown on the tapestry. This, right here, is Nintendo telling us that Link from 10,000 years ago, who wielded the Master Sword and defeated the first Calamity Ganon, was not Hylian, but rather a Zonai. I don't know about you, but I think a Zelda game taking place during the first Calamity would be a great idea. But, of course, you probably don't agree with me right now after this, so let me explain lots more, and by the end of the video, it will all make sense to most of you. Before I discuss the story for this next Zelda game, I need to make a few points first. This is not to be a detailed plot at all. I'm not going to sit here saying, first Link does this, then he has to do this. I'm only explaining my ideas and making a pretty basic objective for a future Zelda game. Just had to get that out real quick before the comment section start getting their pitchforks out, telling me I suck at coming up with a story. Yeah, that's right, I'm looking at you, Link. Anyway, back to the video. So far, for the next Zelda, we know that for my idea, Link is going to be a Zonai, and we will be in the era of 10,000 years ago. That means we will have many Sheikah members wandering Hyrule, working on the Guardians, towers, and shrines. So how would Hyrule feel different from Breath of the Wild's Hyrule? We'll answer that shortly, but let's talk about Link's quest first. Hyrule Castle has been recently finished, and the kingdom was at its most prosperous. That was until members of the Sheikah tribe visited the Hylian king and foretold the arrival of Calamity Ganon. The king gave the Sheikah permission to build their highly advanced tech, and then went searching for someone who could fight the evil foretold to come. A young Zonai man named Link caught the king's attention. The Zonai were said to have a close relationship with the gods, which means that Link, the only Zonai left, could actually speak to the goddess Hylia. Not only through statues, but he could speak to her in person. This could be where our quest in the game begins, and maybe the goddess Hylia could task Link with collecting the essences of power, wisdom, and courage, proving his worth so Hylia could forge him the Master Sword. Next, you would need to help the Princess of Hyrule awaken her power by escorting her to the 3 pieces of the Triforce. That's right, the Triforce hasn't been mentioned in the last 2 Zelda games, and I believe it can make its grand comeback, much like Ganondorf made his grand comeback in Tears of the Kingdom. But where would we find the Triforce? Remember a few minutes ago when I said I would tell you guys how this game's Hyrule would be different from Breath of the Wild's Hyrule? Well, we would have a very early, different landscape of Hyrule, but most importantly, we would be able to travel to the Sacred Realm itself, an entire, brand new map we get to explore. This could also be where new shrines are located, not trials from the Sheikah monks, or trials from King Rauru, but trials from the goddess Hylia. What could be better than shrines though? Traditional dungeons. The dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom were a huge step up from the Divine Beasts, and they brought back awesome, unique boss fights that I enjoyed and loved. But they still lacked in one aspect. We didn't get classic dungeon items. I missed this part in the newer Zelda games, and I think they can return in the next Zelda game. I'll explain more on the items in the next part, so stick around to hear more. When it comes to any video game, planning the gameplay is super essential. The gameplay is what defines a game, and Zelda is no different. Every Zelda game introduced new game mechanics over the years, and to most people, the newer Zelda games introduced us to the new mechanic of Zelda. Breath of the Wild had the player collect weapons and materials across Hyrule, and Tears of the Kingdom had the player collect materials and then fuse them to the weapons to make the weapons stronger. And the game also allowed the player to build almost anything they wanted, from cars to flying hot air balloons, etc. So, what can this next Zelda game do? Well, here's my idea. What if you don't collect any weapons? What if you collected specific materials and then brought them to one of the Sheikah people in Hyrule who could build a weapon that you designed from scratch? Think about that for a moment. That is one of the only things I can think of that would feel super creative that a Zelda game hasn't done yet. One last thing we need to talk about before the surprise is the dungeon items. I think if the next Zelda game has dungeon items, they should act as our new version of Sheikah runes or hand abilities. But let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. Great job! You made it to the surprise. If you really enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more Zelda videos like this and help me reach my goal for 50 subscribers. If we reach that amount, I'll do a video going over your predictions for the next Zelda game. Thank you in advance, and let's finish the video. Every Zelda game is known for its memorable final boss fights, like Ganon, Demise, Vaati, and so much more. Since this is a game telling about the first Calamity, we would just assume that we fight Calamity Ganon again, right? And in my opinion, it would be way too boring since we already fought Calamity Ganon in Breath of the Wild. I guess it's similar to fighting Ganon in the older games, but it just doesn't feel the same as fighting Ganon, and I have a way better final boss for this next Zelda game anyway. Remember the Sorcerer's group in Age of Calamity Guardian of Remembrance DLC, the group that Astor was a part of? Well, what if that group 10,000 years ago were dark magical Sheikah who used the tech to support Calamity Ganon? After all, Astor holds the Sheikah Orb device in his hand during Age of Calamity, so it could make sense. What if at the end of the game, Link along with Zelda has to fight the Ancient Sorcerer's group? It would make for a really cool fight, but let me know what you think. One final thing. If you didn't see the thumbnail, I decided to call this new Zelda game The Legend of Zelda Hero of the Past, since you are Link from 10,000 years ago. Plus, it just sounds cool. So, yeah. At the end of the day, I think the game I explained would feel too similar to Breath of the Wild, but if Nintendo took the basis idea and went on to do their own thing, I think the game could do wonders for all of us. Thanks so much for watching, and subscribe to see more Zelda content and help my channel reach 50 subscribers to discuss your next Zelda game predictions in a future video. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you on our next adventure.